then I have a list here I'm going to pass around. And this is a Growing Solutions Seed Collecting Strike Team.
Yeah.
We will be doing a lot of seed collecting at the Bayona wetlands down by Marina del Rey and at Point Mugu Naval Air Station. That's the two major seed collecting sites. And when we do that, we do it for 2 days at a time usually, maybe 3 days. Sometimes maybe just a day, but if you're on this list, you don't have to work, but we'll just email you. Okay, we'll pay you. We'll go down and we'll just hammer. You guys saw how we did it last week, right?
Yeah.
You just go in there and you just harvest as hard as you can for about 5 hours.
So doing what you did for, a couple hours all day long.
I can do that.
Yeah. Well, by the time you get in there and set up and seed collect and then leave, maybe you do 5 hours of collecting. Wetland restoration, it's super visible. It's right in Malibu State Park, which is right in the center of what they think is the universe, right? Malibu. Pamela Anderson's house is right there. Olivia Newsom-John's house is right there.
Is the lawsuit over? No. They give up? No.
Well, they gave up. The colony ones have been resolved. But the one with the Friends of the Bayona Wetlands is the outplanting one, and all the other contracts are on hold until they see what happens with the lawsuit. But they were smart to put the plant one separate because we can't wait for the lawsuit to be over to collect seed, because the seed collecting window is like right now till about August. And if they were to award that all as one big contract, and it got held up in a lawsuit, then it would put the whole project back a whole year. And the seed will stay a year. Say that lawsuit does take a year to resolve, we're still collecting seed and we're still producing plants, and it's going to get resolved sooner or later, right? It's just money for the lawyers, basically, and some time for the judge to basically, well, we could tell you the story when we're seed collecting, but the two people that filed the suit are certifiably wacko, right? And we've worked with them and we know how wacko they are. There's no reason at all they should have filed a lawsuit, but they've got egos a mile high and they weren't included in the final part of the plan, and so this is sort of just a retribution lawsuit because they're pissed at the other people with the claims. So
which is a sorry use.
It's a sour grapes lawsuit.
Sorry use of restoration dollars.
Yeah.
Kind of a cheap shot, huh?
In California, she's a U.S. Geological Survey plant ecologist and one of the most brilliant people we've ever worked with. In fact, between her and Wayne Farron are probably the two biggest geniuses that we've ever worked with, although we've worked with a lot of smart people, but they are the smartest. And she said, when you're writing grants for getting money for the rare plant stuff, you have to include climate change. The feds are not giving money for research and for recovery of plants and animals if there's not a strong climate change component in the proposal. Everything that the government is doing by 2050. If we have a sea level rise up by 2050, Mark can tell you when he talks about the Blue Slough, all the impacts that that's going to have, and it's going to be heavy duty. It's going to be super expensive. Whole islands in the South Pacific are going to just disappear underwater.
That means Joe's Cafe is going to have a dock
Waterfront,
in front of it.
waterfront view.
Oh.
That's where 5 feet comes to, is Joe's.
Joe's Cafe on State Street.
Right. So what happens to all that property below that, right? That's all worthless property, right? You've got a huge problem on your hands. The harbor's not usable anymore. Ventura Harbor's not usable. The airport's not usable anymore. I mean, so we got a huge problem on our hands. And what's happening with plants is plants can't move as fast as animals can, right? They can only get as far as the next pollen gets distributed, or from an animal, or a wind can blow it, right? Plants can't move like animals. So we're looking at massive extinctions of plant material as things get warmer. Plants are moving north. They're trying to get further north where it's cooler, to the same climate they used to be, but they can only move so fast. So all restoration plans in the future will include a climate change component. So you might as well study up and learn about climate change and how that affects plants and animals. One of the articles how important that is with climate change, because riparian zones are corridors for plant and animal gene flow, right? Even through urban areas and stuff like that. So more than ever, we need to be restoring all our creeks so that there are ways for plant and animal gene flow to move to where they need to move as fast as they can move before they go extinct, right? This thing is, it's coming on faster than anybody expected. I don't know if you've been following the papers or
And
the
more
internet.
strangely, too.
I mean, look at the floods in the Midwest. That hasn't happened since 1937, right? Then you had Katrina, and you had the hottest, the last 3 years have been the hottest years on record in the United States of America. Right? So, you know, it's happening faster. And it's, yeah, it's not just, what do they call it, global warming. Don't ever use that word. It's global climate change, because some places are going to get colder. So it's a misnomer, and that's why the powers that be and the oil companies want to get called global warming, because then they get all the Tea Party people saying, well, it's getting colder where I am, and it's getting wetter. Well, that's part of it, because the climate's going to have bigger they've had in 150 years. And then you go up to Virginia, and it's been the wettest, warmest year in 150 years. So you're starting to see these huge climate shifts start to happen. It's going to affect agriculture, all wild species, and human urban development. Like Tampa, Florida will be underwater. Miami will be underwater. Washington, D.C. along the Potomac will be underwater. Santa Barbara, half of that will be underwater. San Diego will be underwater. Probably at the very tail end of your lifetimes that it's going to really start to do. But if we don't start dealing with it now, you know, we're already 30 years behind dealing with it. We're really going to be stuck in another 20 or 30 years. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. So,
as restorationists, one of the things you want to think about is you want to make sure you don't just be stereotypical, you know, and say just straight warmer or colder. One of the things that Catherine's thinking about in regards to the Channel Islands is how might the currents change? Because if the currents change, that's going to affect the climate, what happens on the island. And right now, historically, the west end of the islands, which would be, so you'd start with Miguel and then Rosa, the storms come in from there, and so those islands have been traditionally wetter. And then by the time you get to
Scorpion,
Anacapa, you know, Scorpion and Anacapa, most of the rain is gone. And so there's been this very distinct pattern. Ocean levels rising, like the Galium buxifolium that we're working on that grows on cliff sides. If the sea levels go up 5 feet, you know, it's just going to get plain old washed away.
it grows right on the edge of the beaches, right?
You know, so
It'll be underwater,
so you need to plan it up. But on the other hand, if the rain patterns change, if the island gets cooler, you know, if the microhabitats change, then you want to think about where might those changes be, you know. And so for the Malacothamnus, we're outplanting in what we've identified as traditional places where this plant grows. But then we need to expand the places and say, well, traditionally it didn't grow here, but if this place gets cooler, it might like it here.
Or if it gets warmer, we put it somewhere else. So we're hedging our bets and spreading